everyone, welcome to Jacob City Fishing's Theology episode. If you are new, please click the subscribe button below and select the option to receive notifications when new episodes are created. Let's jump into some theology. I hope you learn and enjoy. Hey guys, this is part 3 of the How to Read the Bible for All It's Worth, chapter 9, the Law, Covenant, Stipulations for Israel. You'll be able to find all the videos here, and the resources again will be under the resources tab on the website. So I hope you enjoy. Let me know if you have any questions. All right. Fourth, I know this is long. Stay with me. The Old Testament law and other ancient law codes. All right. So I threw this in here. This is from the charts book. There are so many inscriptions of Old Testament significance. Major tablets of Old Testament significance. You have anything from Ben Hassan to the tomb painting, the laws of Hammurabi, as well as the laws of Ashnuna that are added here. Marinta, the Stela, Shishonk, and the Shishonk inscription, House of David inscription, Mesha inscription, Misha, don't know how to say that, Black Stela, Balaam texts, silver scrolls, etc., etc. I put this in here just to demonstrate there's a lot of other laws that were around. A lot of people will try to use this as a means to say, oh, well, that just means that the laws that were given to Israel were copies of these laws. No, that's partly what I want to get into here. There's also parallels between those literary works as well as Old Testament passages. So here's some of those for you. You can look into those and just see how they're different and the same. And how they may be similar stories, but how did they view how the characters should interact with those particular circumstances? And they are different. 5, the Old Testament law as a benefit to Israel. So, yeah, if I go back to these, just to state, understanding how, and I would recommend Dr. Stewart's teaching on Old Testament law because he goes into some of this, understanding how much better the Old Testament law is than these is very important. To go into the benefits of Israelite law and how it actually is an improvement on these types of laws, I strongly would recommend delving into that. I didn't want to get into all the details here because it's already a long video. I want to make sure we can go through all of this, but I'd recommend that video to you, or that series, from Dr. Stewart, who co-authored this book. To move on, the Old Testament law as benefit to Israel. All right, food laws. The laws of shedding of blood, unusual prohibitions, the laws giving blessings to those who keep them. These are some of the examples that people bring up or that we have questions about, right? When we read them, we're like, what does that even mean? Like the food laws, and the pig, though it has a divided hoof, does not chew the cud, it's unclean for you. Bring the bull to the front of the tent of meeting, and Aaron and his sons shall lay their hands on its head, slaughter it in the presence of the Lord at the entrance to the tent of meeting. Take some of the bull's blood and put it on the horns of the altar with your finger, and pour out the rest at the base of the altar. Unusual prohibitions: do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. And then there are many laws that actually have blessings tied to them. At the end of every 3 years, bring all your tithes of that year's produce and store it in your towns, so that the Levites, who have no allotment or inheritance of their own, and the foreigners, the fatherless, and the widows who live in your towns may come and eat and be satisfied, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. Food laws. Consider the protective purpose of food laws. We do not know, think about this as a note, we do not know the reasoning but directly from God outside of it being his will, that, and this should be enough. However, there are additional things to considering the goodness and love of God. So as we go through, the vast majority of foods prohibited, and your understanding of those things, they're more likely to carry diseases in arid climates. The unclean animals that they're not supposed to eat are more likely to carry diseases in the arid climates of the Sinai Desert or the land of Canaan. They're foolish to have economically, so they're uneconomical to raise as food, in particular agrarian context of the Sinai Desert or Canaan. And they are foods favored for religious sacrifice by groups whose practices the Israelites were not to copy. And that's an important one. That impacts the religious customs of others, impacts a lot of these other laws. And then we throw in, additionally, medical research has concluded that food allergies vary according to ethnic populations. The food laws undoubtedly kept Israel away from certain allergies. Many of the animals rejected as unclean could also cause irritation to the Israelite digestive tracts. Lamb is the least, for the spelling there, least allergenic of all popular meats, according to specialists in food allergies. So we use some of our thoughts today and reflect back on what was going on there, and we can see whether or not economically it was a good thing, whether health-wise it was a good thing, and whether it was healthy for that animal to be in that area. So there are aspects of wisdom that we can use to say, hey, these are reasons why we think God did this for their benefit. There are laws about the shedding of blood. Consider the protective purposes of sacrificial laws with regards to the brevity of sin. The sacrificial laws establish a framework for understanding the necessity for Christ entering into his creation. So this is understanding why the shedding of blood was important helps us know why Jesus had to come, and the brevity of sin. Sin deserves punishment. God revealed to his people through the law that the one who sins against God does not deserve to live. God also provided a procedure by which the sinner might escape death. A substitute's blood could be shed. The one who sins against God does not deserve to live, but God offered a substitute, an animal, in place of the death of the sinner among his people. The sacrificial system of the law incorporated this procedure into the life of Israel. It was a necessary part of the survival of the people. This understanding was picked up in the New Testament as well. You can refer to Hebrews 9:22. The laws that required a substitutionary sacrifice set a precedent for the work of Christ's substitutionary atonement. And yes, penal substitutionary atonement is biblical as reflective of the framework that was established here. The principle stated in Hebrews is a thoroughly biblical one. Christ's death provides a fulfillment of the law's demand and is the basis for our acceptance with God. The Old Testament law serves as a vivid background for the greatest of events in history. So the laws of shedding of blood present us with a background of the reality and need of a penal substitutionary atonement to take place on our behalf. Don't get caught up in the lies that God's was not wrathful towards Jesus, and Jesus didn't take his wrath on himself for us. They're lies, and it's a false gospel. I've dealt with people like that already at previous churches, and it is wrong. Unusual prohibitions. Don't cook a young goat in its mother's milk. Don't mate at different kinds of animals. Don't plant your field with two different kinds of seeds. Don't wear clothes woven of two different kinds of material. Consider the protective purpose of restraining Israel from copying others in their worship of false gods. These kinds of prohibitions were designed to forbid the Israelites in engaging in fertility cult practices of the Canaanites. The Canaanites believed in what was called sympathetic magic. This was the idea that symbolic actions can influence the gods in nature. They thought that boiling a baby goat, in its mother's milk would magically ensure the continuing fertility of the flock. Mixing animal breeds, seeds, or materials was thought to marry them so to magically produce offspring, meaning agricultural bounty in the future. God cannot and would not bless his people if they practiced such nonsense. You couldn't cook any baby animal in its mother's milk. It wasn't just about goats, but about religious habits of other ethnic groups. The Israelites knew from the paradigm that they could not imitate a known pagan practice. Again, they're paradigmatic. Don't do things that other people groups did as religious acts. They were to push away other religious groups and honor only and be loyal to only the God. We have problems with that today. All these religious groups are so similar. There's so many things that they're so alike. No. We shouldn't associate in that way things of God to things of the world. Islam is not the same. They are not worshiping the same God as Christians are. Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, they're not worshiping the same God as Christians are. Jews are not worshiping the same God that Christians are. The God that they're worshiping is a made up God based off of the things that they believe are still going on. They can't do we desire for them to connect the dots of the reality that the Old Testament has been fulfilled in Christ? Yes. But the God that they continue to say is not related to Jesus isn't the real God. Jesus came, the Messiah came. And so we have to point them through scripture to the reality that the real God did send the Messiah. And you need to change your thoughts on what happened and what was fulfilled in the Old Testament. Yeah, and that gets into other things, but just understanding Hindus don't worship the same God. Indians in India don't worship the same God. No matter, Buddha isn't the same God. I mean, there's just so many that we think, oh, but there's so many similarities. They're not the same, nor should we associate with them as such. Next, laws giving blessings to those who keep them. Again, consider the protective purpose of laws designed to bring about blessings. All of Israel's laws were designed to be a means of blessings for the people of God. Some of them actually specifically mention a blessing for obedience. The tithe was an example, as in this text, where following through with the law would bring blessing, but disobedience would result in a withholding of prosperity and be considered theft from God. The tithe was a resource for the needy to be helped. So in this case, yeah, there would also be consequences shown. You know, the incentives go both ways, blessings and cursings if they didn't follow through. All right. So that's the large amount that we just went through. Let's talk about some do's and don'ts and finish up. 12 do's and don'ts. In conclusion, do see the Old Testament law as God's fully inspired word for you, but don't see the Old Testament law as God's direct command to you. Next, do see the Old Testament law as the basis for the Old Covenant and therefore Israel's history, but don't see the Old Testament law as binding on Christians in the New Covenant, except where specifically renewed. Fifth, do see God's justice, love, and high standards revealed in the Old Testament law, but don't forget to see that God's mercy is made equal to the severity of the standards. 7, do see the Old Testament law as a paradigm providing examples for the full range of expected behavior, but don't see the Old Testament law as complete. It's not technically comprehensive like I showed you. It's not the same methodology as used in the US today where all laws are written for specific situations. 9, do remember that the essence of the law, the 10 commandments and the 2 chief laws, they are repeated in the prophets and renewed in the New Testament. Don't expect the Old Testament law to be cited frequently by the prophets or the New Testament. Legal citation was first introduced only in the Roman era, long after the Old Testament was complete. Because the laws were paradigmatic, the prophets dealt with them in that way and could confront Israel in that way. They weren't following through with the law because the law itself was paradigmatic. The letter of the law was not being followed because the paradigms of the law were not being followed. Lastly, do see the Old Testament law as a generous gift to Israel, bringing much blessing when obeyed. But don't see the Old Testament law as a grouping of arbitrary, annoying regulations limiting people's freedom. They were meant to demonstrate how to love God and love others. And they certainly are not meant to demonstrate any bit that God's just this angry, malicious deity that's not real. In reality, he is a just God, and we need to reflect that even now in how we deal with things justly. We need to be just, merciful, and gracious. We need to have consequences for actions, severe, in some cases, consequences for actions. But we also need to have mercy and grace. We shouldn't avoid political environments because we're too afraid to step up, but we should do something about it. What we should see is loving God and loving others actually means that we should do something about things going on in society and politics. All right, a little extra for you. I threw some of these out there. A chart of the laws. So whom to worship. We see some of these passages in Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy. How to treat God. I mean, obviously there's a lot. Sacrifices, holy days, vows, temple rituals, purity issues and rituals, tithes and offerings, sabbatical years, idolatry, blasphemy, and curses. So you can go to these passages and learn more. The social structure and ethics. So within this, I just wanted to give you the framework, right? These are the stipulations that God gave in these areas that they needed to understand in Israel. These are the paradigms, some of the paradigms to think of. So if you want to learn about the paradigms of leaders, go to this passage in Deuteronomy, or family. Here's some passages, or slaves, land ownership and use, personal property, respect of persons, and justice, as well as laws on sexual and bodily purity, warfare, divination, food laws. You can go to these passages and find more information about how God required Israel to live with regard to these areas. I wanted to throw some calendar and agricultural seasons and holidays in here. These are important because remember, they were supposed to recall back what God did in order to remember the law. So remembering Passover, the first fruits, Pentecost, the destruction of the temple was added in, but not necessarily a major, I mean, it was a major thing, but in the Torah, it wasn't so much put there. The Day of Atonement, the Feast of Tabernacles, understanding what these days meant, the deliverance from Egypt, celebration of the harvest, destruction of the temple, sacrifices for the sins of the nation, wanderings in the wilderness. All of those things are important for them to understand. So I took the charts that were given and I melded them together so you can see when in our calendar they were and days, and then what season, farm seasons, according to the book, they were. But I recommend getting to know these because they are intricate to the covenant that was made. If they didn't follow through with Passover, how many times did they actually do Passover? What was the first fruit celebration? What were these things? It's important to know. Again, the dedication in Purim, in Esther, offerings for animals, clean and unclean animals, mammals, birds, reptiles, water animals, and insects. Passages that refer to them, and then whether they're clean or not, how to determine if they're clean or not. We see that like all reptiles, for example, are unclean. Don't eat them. Don't sacrifice them. The basic reasons: holiness demanded being like God. Many restrictions to Israelite diet are derived from restrictions to Yahweh's diet, animals that were unacceptable for sacrifice. So they ate only what was acceptable generally for sacrifices. Unclean animals failed to conform in some ways to the expectation of the group to which they belong. So they may fit maybe water animals, but they're missing fins, they're missing scales, they're abnormal types of creatures within those areas. Some animals were considered unclean because of their association with pagan cults. And we discussed that already. Next, and the offerings. So this goes through the burnt offerings, the meal offerings or tribute offerings, peace offerings. And quite honestly, I have a hard time finding information in these areas for offerings because I don't see many books clearly articulating, what is a free will offering specifically, like here, the reason for a fellowship offering, for an unexpected blessing, for deliverance when a vow was made or on that condition, or for general thankfulness. You don't see much stated on a fellowship offering. The meal offering or tribute offering being for general thankfulness or for first fruits. Hey, thank you for delivering these things to us. And these are things we need to remember, right? I mean, as burnt offerings, propitiation for general sin demonstrates dedication. We need to remember what Jesus did and give thanks. That's taking communion, right? Meal offerings and free will offerings, understanding, hey, God, thank you for giving me my paycheck. If you get a bonus each year, thanks God for an initial bonus for the year that can help out for the rest of the year. Sin offerings with communion applies basically to situations where purification is needed, and guilt offerings applies to situations where there has been desecration or desacralization of something holy, or where there is objective guilt. If you've sinned and you're guilty, go to God. We deserve to ask for forgiveness for that. We need that offering. We need what Jesus did. Thank God for it. It cost him. So, and that's it for this one. I hope and pray that it's helpful. I know I've been getting responses back saying that it has been. So I hope and pray that it's beneficial to you. I will post the stack that I made, the slides, on the website, and I hope you enjoy it. Yeah, and I hope you're able to go there and take a look and just see that there are some things there that are available to you. As I do different series, I'm going to put them on any resources on there and the links to the videos. So I hope you enjoy the website and enjoy the video and learn how to understand the Old Testament, the covenant, and the law. And it really changes dramatically and encourages you and brings you joy in the midst of understanding what occurred in the Old Testament for us to have Jesus come. So God bless, guys, and take care.